Welcome to the Florence Foodies podcast, a place for the community to gather and share the stories, voices, and experiences that make Florence feel like home. To support this podcast and the Florence Foodies platform as a whole, click the Support This Podcast link found in the description.
So, Morrey, one thing that I wanted to tell you is that from pretty much the time that we started this whole thing, and I was telling you off camera a moment ago that it's been kind of an evolution. It's still evolving, really. But since we started this, you really, through social media, specifically Facebook, have been a supporter of what we've been doing. And I don't think people always see or understand the vision. And I don't really care. I don't lose sleep over it. But it is nice whenever somebody, and there's been a few people that have either messaged me or just, through posts and things like that, interactions, have demonstrated that they kind of have an understanding of almost a similarity of feeling what I feel when we look at the Florence food scene, when we look at our area in terms of our relation as a community to food. And I want to tell you that I really appreciate that because, it's encouraging, just to have that kind of support, but even more so than support, that understanding that, like, we genuinely really would like to see the Florence food scene develop and be as robust as it possibly can be. And I'm encouraged. A lot of people have been very pessimistic historically, and I'm not when it comes to this. I think that there's a lot of reason to be optimistic and hopeful. And now it's almost like that momentum is just exponentially growing, and it's exciting. And so we just like to be involved in that, like to just, whether it's educating or just sitting down and having conversations like today, exploring all of the above. And I think you've really grabbed hold of that and seen what we were doing and hopefully have enjoyed the content too. So I just want to tell you I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So for those that don't know, including myself a little bit, this is our first time sitting down and getting to meet each other. Actually, yesterday was our first time meeting because ironically, I just so happened to bump into you, but we'll talk about that here in a moment. That'll be a good lead into another part of the conversation. But why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and give a little background? Are you from the Florence area?
Sure. I was born and raised in Darlington. I spent a 20-year naval career on submarines, traveling the world and eating all kind of cuisines. I'm a very adventurous eater. I'd order things in different countries and I couldn't pronounce it on the menu, didn't know what I was ordering, and I would get it. So I have a very open palate. I'm not the kind that goes to the same thing all the time. So following my naval career, I returned to Darlington, where my father's family has owned the News and Press newspaper since 1955. And I took over the helm of the News and Press and continued to run that paper until I retired the year of the COVID. So I've had lots of different experiences, nuclear submarines from there to journalism. So it's kind of an interesting different feel, but I got to see a lot of things in my life.
So what kind of stuff does a guy eat on a submarine?
Well, believe it or not, submarine food's pretty good. We're down underwater on typically patrols. My submarine had the nuclear missiles on board, so our goal was to remain undetected underwater for a longer period of time. So they tried to compensate us by having good food. We'd have, of course, you don't have unlimited storage facilities for food, but we'd have lobster tail and we'd have steak night, and we had some decent food. Of course, you had the powdered eggs and the powdered milk. That goes without saying. But interestingly enough, we had better food than the surface fleet had on the submarine.
Interesting. Well, that makes sense. That's probably not unnerving, being strapped to nuclear missiles.
Well, my job was in the nuclear compartment. So no matter where you went on there was all kind of radiation around you, for sure.
Well, at least you have some lobster tails. So.
Lobster tails. And plus, when we pulled into different ports for different reasons, we had the exposure of one of my duty stations was in Rota, Spain. And being on a seacoast area like that, having a leisurely dinner in a bistro with a paella, octopus, and all kind of stuff, you just can't describe it to someone that's never been there.
One thing I've learned about you is you're a well-cultured guy, it seems, when it comes to food and cuisine. I've had a lot of experiences, tried a lot of different things. And tying into that, one thing you mentioned to me kind of in the lead-in to us sitting down and filming this episode was a little education on the history of barbecue in the state of South Carolina. So tell us a little bit about that. I'll let you lead into it.
Well, I think every state would like to claim they're the birthplace of barbecue. I think we have that conversation with our North Carolina neighbors and possibly our Texas neighbors, maybe even Tennessee from Memphis. But in South Carolina is actually documented to be the birthplace of barbecue. In 1512 in St. Helena, down around the Beaufort area, Spanish colonists settling in that area met with the local native Indians and learned to take the pigs they brought and to cook them on open-air pits over live wood coals. That was in 1500. They had a sherry that they brought with them, and it turned into vinegar. They had salt. They had pepper from the Spice Island trades. All of it came together. Vinegar pepper barbecue, open air cooked over a pit, over live coals with American native Indians, and there's your barbecue. It was called barbacoa back then, meaning, to cook on an open pit, the Spanish word for it. So when North Carolina claims that, we're the birthplace of barbecue, that really kind of evolved from the days of the tobacco, when the tobacco would be harvested at the end of the year, and the farmer would cook a whole hog for the people that worked in the industry. And it was then they started selling the barbecue. But documented is that South Carolina from 1512 is the birthplace of barbecue as we know it today.
Fascinating. I didn't know that. That's pretty awesome. We're tip of the sphere in South Carolina. That's just the way it has always been, and it'll always be.
Yep. Yep, absolutely.
So in that same vein, one thing, and it's interesting, so being in Beaufort would fall in line with the map that you sent me.
Yes.
And the vinegar base, that would make sense, talking about the sherry. So I'm going to let you share a little bit on this map. And for those that are watching the video version of this, I'll put it on the screen. Obviously, if you're listening, then you won't see it. But I could actually relate to this. I thought it was interesting because of my own background. I'd never really thought about it. I knew this in general about this map kind of in general terms, but I've never actually looked at the specific boundaries and the map. And I've got my own experience that would relate to it. I'm going to talk about that. But why don't you share about those different, I guess it's quadrants of barbecue in the state of South Carolina?
Sure. Well, South Carolina is the only state that we are aware of that has 4 distinct barbecue sauce styles. And when we say sauce, of course, sometimes we know when barbecue is prepared, the sauce is cooked into the meat as the barbecue is being prepared. Sometimes it's just added on to the meat at a later point. But the 4 styles, as you mentioned, in the Low Country, the PD, the Low Country, all the way up to North Carolina, Dillon, all the way down through Beaufort, Low Country, Charleston, is vinegar pepper, probably influenced by that original Spanish colonist vinegar pepper barbecue. Now, the Midlands is a little different. You'll recognize the name Bessinger, the name Shealy, the name Height. All these are Germans. These are German immigrants that settled into the region between Columbia, Spartanburg, the Midlands, and German influence is very mustard. Germans are really, really into their mustard flavor profile. So then we develop a mustard-style barbecue sauce. Quite good, quite different than vinegar pepper, but quite good, very tasty. With the German influence, we go a little bit more western in the state over to the Aiken area. Well, they decided that they didn't want to have just a pure vinegar pepper, so they started adding a little tomato into it, a little ketchup, something to sweeten it up a little bit, something to give it a little bit of, they call that light tomato. It's basically vinegar pepper with some ketchup added to it if you really get down to it. So it's a kind of an easy thing to prepare. So we have the vinegar pepper, we have mustard, we have light tomato, and then up in the Spartanburg and the northern region of the upstate region, Greenville, Spartanburg, then they shift into that style which is known as heavy tomato. Think KC Masterpiece. Think barbecue sauce, prepared barbecue sauces that you can buy off the shelf of a store, which are more thick and a little bit has more body to it than vinegar pepper, perhaps. I learned to cook my first hog in Williamsburg County in Kingstree from a family member who raised hogs. He had a little hog business on the side of his normal activities, and we would make vinegar pepper barbecue sauce. And he said the first time I made the sauce, what are our ingredients? He said, vinegar, salt, pepper, and pepper, and pepper. And I said, really? That's true. There are 3 peppers in the traditional low country style of barbecue sauce, which is ground cayenne, red pepper flakes, and black pepper. Black pepper, believe it or not, is a lot of the heat in a barbecue sauce with the pepper vinegar.
I'm a black pepper guy, and this all makes sense. And it tells me, too, that you're really a product of your environment to an extent, because I've like I said, I've thought about this casually, but I never really gave it the kind of thought that I did until I saw the map. And I was telling you also earlier that I spent a large chunk of my childhood in Colombia. And so if you were to ask me, and I like you give me a pulled pork sandwich, I can do the Casey Matt or Sweet Baby Ray's, for me. I mean, I can do a lot of different sauces, but my preference is by and far, vinegar-based, vinegar pepper. I love black pepper, and I have to tone it down when I'm cooking sometimes with black pepper. I got to be mindful of who I'm cooking for. But yeah, it'd be vinegar. Vinegar-based is by far my favorite. And then I also don't mind a good mustard-based sometimes. So Maurice's Gold.
Very good one.
Maurice's Gold,
Very good
but
one.
That's that Columbia background. And actually,
Very
last
good
time
one.
I was in Columbia, I took my sons up to an event last year, stopped by Maurice's. And just a side note, I mentioned this, but this is completely off the rails, but it is true. The Maurice's French fries, I was trying to dial in what they reminded me of, and I figured it out the last time we were up there last year. They remind me of the Wendy's French fries from the 90s, which is a sweet memory. And that Wendy's, I'm not going to get into all of that, but I'm just saying, for those of you that know, that that was it's a relic basically at this point. 90s Wendy's, we'd love to have it back. If you understand what I'm saying, go to Maurice's in Columbia, and those French fries, get you a barbecue sandwich. It's going to be mustard based, and those French fries remind you of the 90s Wendy's fries. Most people probably don't care about that, but some of you do, and I took that time to say that for you. You know who you are. The mustard base for me is a distant second to vinegar base, but that would make sense because the majority of my life I've been here. So Florence over towards Myrtle Beach. But I do have a little bit of that background in Colombia, and that's probably where I get that appreciation for the mustard base. The tomato based sauces, like I said, I can do it, but they're very far in the rearview mirror, even from those two. So that makes complete sense, I would say.
Yeah. And it's all good. And like you said, Sammy, it's really, if you ask somebody what kind of barbecue you like, it always goes back to where they were born and raised, their first experiences with barbecue. If you were born in the Midlands and you said, we're going to go eat vinegar pepper barbecue, some people would have a not so favorable reaction to it.
Right.
Said, oh, well, I'd prefer, a mustard-based barbecue. And it really, like you said, is you're a product of your environment. The first that you remember as a child is what you kind of hone in on. That's the one that imprints.
Yep, and that's 100%. And so for me, and it's amazing that, they're still around rocking to this day, but I grew up on Rogers Barbecue and Cane's Barbecue.
Sure.
That was my whole childhood would have been one of those two places.
Right.
Depending on who I was with. And so that's my background, so it makes complete sense. Interesting. Yeah, that was eye-opening to me. So again, the map was on the screen. If you're interested in that, that might explain. You might learn more about yourself, perhaps, looking at that map as well, like I did. So people wouldn't know this. Well, the people that know you would, but a lot of people that are listening to this or watching wouldn't know. This isn't just two guys sitting here talking about barbecue. There's one guy just sitting here running his mouth about barbecue, but you are in a whole nother class when it comes to barbecue education, experience, history, and knowledge. You've actually had some roles in terms of competition barbecue and that kind of thing. So share about that.
Sure. Upon leaving the Navy, becoming involved in the Press Association, one of the mentors that I had in the Press Association in Columbia said, why don't you join the South Carolina Barbecue Association with me, and let's judge some barbecue festivals, events, competitions. I'd love to. That's where we began. So I started out as a novice judge and really enjoyed it, traveling all over the state. And you're going to see when you train judges that the judges have a certain bias to where they're from. And you've got to remove that bias from that judge's head or brain so you can really objectively judge barbecue, because you can't say, well, the only style I like is vinegar pepper. Nothing else is good. That's not going to be the judge you want.
Right.
That's not the one. But anyway, I worked my way up. I became a master judge in the Barbecue Association. At the time that I was a master judge, there were maybe 14 master judges in this state, and there's between 700 and 1,000 judges in the association, Barbecue Association. Judges go through training classes. They go through training periods with master judges at events. But I worked up through the ranks, took a couple of years, became a master judge, and then I became a judge trainer. I still did events and set up events. As a matter of fact, I set up an event here in Florence that I'd like to discuss with you here shortly, if we can. It's a Youth Mentors event. But working my way through the ranks, and this is all volunteer now. None of this is a paid position. So you're kind of doing this for the love of barbecue, not for a financial investment here. So I did training, and then from there I worked up and became the executive director of the South Carolina Barbecue Association. We had the two founders, and I sort of worked with them, setting up festivals throughout the state. About 45 festivals in South Carolina that have competition barbecue. It's really interesting to see the difference between commercial barbecue and competition barbecue, as I can explain to you if you would like to know later. But I had a lot of experience with barbecue, with learning about different styles of barbecue. And the main takeaway from this is that if you get somebody from Aiken, or you get somebody from Spartanburg and they aspire to be a judge, you get somebody from Florence, from the PD area, and all they've had is vinegar pepper barbecue, and you bring those two together, one's going to say, oh, I don't like this, and the other one's going to say, oh, I don't like this. You never say, I don't like this. What you say is, I want to judge the one that's prepared the best for what it is. I don't care what the sauce is on it. I don't care what the style is. I want the one that has the most attention to detail, the one that's the most tender. When you're judging, you're looking for, the first thing you look at is you look at it with your eyes. You eat with your eyes first. You look at the appearance, how well they prepared the clamshell, the turn-in box, how well they prepared that, the way that they present that box to you. That's a big part of your score, the visual presentation. And then you're smelling the aroma. Do you get wood smoke? Do you get the good smells? Do you get is everything working so far? Basically from the eyes and from the nose. You're halfway there. Then you taste it. You get the tenderness. You get the texture. You get the taste of the barbecue sauce. You get all that together, and then you come up with your overall presentation, your overall package. How is that? So those are the components of how a judge evaluates the barbecue.
Awesome.
It's interesting how people that present really, really good barbecue can always come up with the same winner. Because we had a food festival in Myrtle Beach. Guy Fieri was there, a couple of other notables, Aaron McCargo, some other well-known Food Network guys were there. We all had a great meeting with them. We had 10 master judges at this. It was basically the state competition. The top cookers were invited. The top cook teams in the state were invited, along with the master judges and along with the food TV personalities. Well, you'd think that maybe those TV personalities haven't been trained as well in exact science of how you judge this. Interestingly enough, of the 10 barbecue teams that were competed, including Guy Fieri, including Aaron McCargo, including this, every person picked the same team as the winner.
Wow.
That just says good barbecue stands out.
Yeah. Well, that puts legitimacy to it too.
It does. It
does.
does.
Stands out like that.
Yep. One of the things that was a requirement to be a master judge is that you had to cook 3 separate events with competition cook teams. You had to be part of their team, so you had to see what it took to get that barbecue to the judging table. And I learned to cook that way. I learned to cook barbecue like that.
Well, that would be one of the perks. And I mean, for me, that's where a lot of the internet content has come in helpful, is learning how to tinker with things and translate that to my own kitchen and become a better cook. Because I like to eat, but I mean, I like to cook as well. So if we could actually cook stuff that's good, that's even better. And I know my wife and kids would appreciate it. That's and then I think for the judging, that would be important too, because I mean, cooking is an entire art form. And so when you really understand the entire process, and especially when you're talking about slow smoking meat, I mean, that's not something that just happens. And so I think that to actually put that quality of a product out, especially something where people across the board can acknowledge that this is the best, I would expect nothing less than the process from A to Z was, intensive and detailed. So with that said, you made a comment, and I've heard this. I've got he'll be a brother-in-law soon, and he does competition ribs. And he made a comment at one gathering, one holiday, somewhere it was last year. It wasn't that long ago. And you just said it, and I do want to know more about it. So what is the difference in, you said commercial, but commercial and competition barbecue?
Well, commercial barbecue has, we don't want to say it has a bad connotation, but it can be rushed. Competition barbecue is cooked with a lot of love and care. There are barbecue restaurants, and we have one in Florence that cooks barbecue with love and care too. So it's not unheard of. It's unusual that most people just put the Boston butt in a electric cooker, cook it, run it through a buffalo chopper, throw some sauce on it, and here you go.
So when you say love and care, what would the difference be? What does that mean?
Well, someone that's willing to take the time to do it the right way. The old-fashioned way that has been around for many, many years is pit cooked on live wood coals. It's a dying art. It's almost gone. There's a few places around that do it. A few. We have one in Florence. It's Elliott's Barbecue at the Seminar Brewing.
I got the shirt on right now.
I tell you, that's love and care. That's what I mean by love and care. Another place that is very similar that you find, and I'm not saying that, we've got some really, really great barbecue restaurants in the PD. We can name many of them. You named Cane's and obviously Rogers, and we can name Schuler's and Latta, and we can name various other ones.
Schoolhouse, Woodstone. There's a bunch of them, yeah.
There's a lot of them. PD is good for barbecue.
Yeah.
Good for barbecue. The love and care part of it is the slow overnight, staying up all night with a burn barrel, shoveling coals underneath the hog. That's the love I'm talking about.
It's a huge time commitment. And so when we did the showcase for slabs in Lake City, and, just having some off-camera conversation with Brian and learning their process, him and Barbara, I mean, that level of commitment, you got to be committed, because it is a huge commitment, really. And if you've ever smoked anything at home, I mean, really, this. If you ever tried to smoke a brisket or something like that, would usually the thing that people mostly talk about, you realize how much of a commitment, how much oversight that requires.
Sure. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do I don't have a large commercial cooker. I don't have a pit, and I'm not going to take a chainsaw and cut hickory and oak and burn them in a burn barrel. But I will do charcoal with wood chunks, and I'll take them on my Weber Smoky Mountain smoker, and I've got a butt that I'll do this weekend. That process, even though it's not quite the same as perhaps Elliott does at Seminar, it still it takes a good 12 to 15 hours for that butt to get fall apart tender, for the collagen to break down, and for it to just string and pull it just without any kind of effort. That's time and commitment.
And it's skill and technique, because on the flip side, it's easy to overdo it also then. And so, so the guys that have mastered it, you call them pit masters.
Yep.
That's a worthy title if they've really got the product like that.
Absolutely.
It's funny, mentioning that this was going to be the first time that we met when we sat down to do this episode, and this was supposed to be a couple of days ago, and then I had a baby. A fifth child was born at 3:40 in the morning, and so we postponed to today. But I actually bumped into you yesterday at Elliott's. So I was out running around just doing checks on a few different properties we've got coming up and doing all my stuff. And I stopped to grab lunch. And yesterday I didn't come for barbecue. I came to get the chicken sandwich. Whole nother side story. Wouldn't even get into that. But the chicken sandwich that he does is also of interest. And I saw you sitting there at the table. And so I went ahead and I wanted to pick up a shirt. I was waiting on these. Elliott's is exciting. And so we've got his process. How much can you share about that? How much can you say about what Elliott's doing over there with his barbecue?
Well, Elliott's style of cooking barbecue goes back to the tobacco pack houses of years of old. He's doing it with a burn barrel where he's taking oak and hickory, he's burning it, taking the live coals, shoveling that under the whole hogs on his pit. He's doing his ribs that way. He's doing his chicken that way. There was a pan of baked beans on the pit, all absorbing that beautiful smoke flavor. It's a long cook. It's not something you sit on an oven dial and go home. Right. This is an overnight situation. Yeah. I hope people realize in the PD what we have available right here in Florence, that somebody with that dedication, that compassion, that love for what they're doing, we have them right here. And I saw you there yesterday.
You did. And I mean, that's huge for us to have. We talked about the momentum of the Florence food scene and everything that's going on downtown, what Tim Norwood and those guys have done. Obviously, Victor's, I did, and I've mentioned this in the previous episode, but I literally titled that video, the showcase we did there, "This Restaurant Changed the City." And there was a lot of truth to that to me. There's so much development and momentum that's been happening, but planting Elliott on the scene is huge. It really is. And I mean, that can draw future talent. And then obviously we just had Florence Food and Wine. We had him paired up with Rodney Scott. I mean, that's like a tag team championship right there. So it's really exciting.
Well, back in, 12, 13 years ago, Big Brothers and Big Sisters was an organization in Florence. That has now changed to the Youth Mentors of the PD, where all of the money raised by this competition festival that's coming up next weekend, the 11th and 12th. And this is going to be the chance for the public, as we're broadcasting to be able to try competition barbecue rather than commercial barbecue. Now, Elliott's is as good as you can get. Don't get me wrong. There's also the difference of what competition barbecue may be like. And this is what I'd like people to know, that they have the opportunity this next week to go try competition barbecue.
So I want to dive into that a little bit. Let's unpack that some. I'd like to know, I'm going to reel off the list of things that I want you to share, and then I'll just let you run with it. Where is the competition? When is the competition? But also, what is available at the competition? So we talked about the different styles of barbecue in South Carolina. What can people expect to encounter and try while they're out there at this competition? Then who's making the barbecue?
Absolutely. Those are all key questions to why you'd want to go there. The Youth Mentors of the PD, like I say, we started the event with the Barbecue Association with Bobby Floyd and with Wally Smith. We started that festival, I think it was either 12 or 13 years ago, at the Palmetto Peddler. Now they're expanding it to Peddler, so the festival has moved. The Youth Mentors of the PD, all the money raised from this festival will stay locally for very, very good causes, for wayward children that are helped along the way, college graduates now. Some of them are even in politics because of the Youth Mentors. But anyway, lots of festivals happen across the state of South Carolina that kind of floats around, but the number floats between 40 and 45 festivals per year. It's typically fundraisers for charity events is what they do. Now, how does a festival work is the key question. South Carolina Barbecue Association supplies the judges. They will supply the necessary amount of judges based on the number of teams. So Mr. Smith mentioned to me the other day for this event at the fairgrounds, this coming Friday and Friday evening from 5 to 7, and from Saturday day from 11 to 2. They have between 14 and 20 cook teams that will be there. On Friday night, it's interesting because the barbecue is not ready yet. The cook teams roll in on a Friday afternoon, and they prepare something for the public. The public comes in, they buy a $10 armband. With that $10 armband, they can sample till they can't sample anymore. Friday night is called an anything but. Butt being pork butt. So there's no pork involved. There'll be a lot of chicken wings. There'll be a lot of chicken bog. There will be a lot of things that are really cool. They have a savory division, and then they have a sweet division. Probably some of the best desserts, pecan praline cheesecake stuff. I'm talking about serious things. Now, the cook teams are competing for prizes, for prize money. Top prize in both categories, $1,000, $1,500 apiece. The public's coming in with a $10 armband between 5 and 7, eat till the heart's content, till it's gone. Saturday is when the barbecue, because the cook teams will at that point begin preparing their barbecue overnight. And once again, we're talking about overnight. We're talking about cooking on wood. We're talking about cooking on charcoal with wood. We're talking about a long, slow cook. So at 11 o'clock the Saturday morning, the cook teams are turning in their samples to be judged by the Barbecue Association. Then the public comes in. They have to buy an armband, another $10 armband, and then they can sample unlimited amounts of barbecue. 2-ounce cups of barbecue, 20 cook teams. What's that, 40 ounces of barbecue? Yeah. I don't know anybody that can eat 3 pounds of barbecue, But anyway, it is eat to your heart's content. Now, you're getting samples. These cook teams are from all over the state, and these are the top cookers in the state, vying for thousands of dollars worth of prizes. They are looking for recognition. They build points towards the annual Cooker of the Year championship. They get points for how they score in each event. So it's sort of the cook teams are vying for awards. They're vying for notoriety. They're it's sort of a I can cook better than he can type thing, So but the public gets to come in. Now, so and so may cook a sauce that's got a more of a tomatoey. He might be from Spartanburg or Greenville, or he might be cooking a barbecue and he brushes on a glaze with a little bit richer tomatoey. And then there may be a guy from Florence that puts in some vinegar pepper barbecue. It's all good, Sammy. There's no bad barbecue out there. They're in there to win it. They're in it to win it, and it's a good. And the Youth Mentors is the host of this festival at the Florence Fairgrounds next Friday and Saturday, 11 and 12. All the money raised by these $10 armbands goes to youth. It stays right here. There's no admin fees, and I highly recommend it. That's part of what the Barbecue Association does, is work with towns or events and different organizations to support charities, to support the youth, to support people in need. And it's the Barbecue Association has been doing this for some years. And it's a great, I would highly suggest it if anybody has the opportunity, Florence Fairgrounds this weekend coming up.
So these guys that are cooking, guys and gals, are South Carolinians?
Yes, because this is basically a South Carolina event. I think there probably has been a North Carolina cooker that slipped in through the cracks, but it's not. Get in there? It's not limited to that. They're cooking in. I think we've had a Georgia team in there before. It's not limited to South Carolina, but they are cooking for South Carolina competitions.
Are any of these guys, would they be people like in Elliott that have a restaurant back home wherever they're from, or most just pit masters in their own personal leisure? How does that work?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when we were at the Palmetto Peddler with this event a couple of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, Bill Travis with Holy Smokin'. Bill's not with us any longer, but Bill was one of the cook teams. Right, I was chatting with Bill. How's it going? And he said, fine. He said, I'm trying to get everything done. I've got a restaurant to try to, run, but I want to do this. Understanding that was good exposure for his restaurant, Holy Smokin'.
That's what I was asking, because if people go out there this coming weekend and try barbecue, would they have access, possibly at least in some cases, to a restaurant that they could go track it down if they like it, or, find other stuff that they're doing. And so they're coming in and setting up their pit. So I guess you said they come into town on Friday. The cook is overnight Friday for Saturday morning. So they're coming in and setting that pit up at the fairgrounds.
Yeah, they'll spend the night out there babysitting their barbecue.
I would just say that's another layer of impressiveness, I would say, because cooking, it's just like whenever to me at least, and like I said, I'm on a third grade level with a lot of this maybe, but to me, even when you change ovens, you get a new oven and you have to, a new cooktop, you have to adjust everything. You're used to exactly where to set your dials and everything, and when you get that new equipment, you have to have a time of kind of feeling it out. You're probably going to burn some stuff up or take longer to cook than you thought, just because those temperatures just tweak a little bit. And so I would imagine setting up a pit, coming out to fairgrounds and having to set up and then reproduce your product and being able to nail it. That's a whole nother level to really just how impressive it is, what's being done, to me, I would say.
Well, there's a funny little story, Sam, I'll share with you. My wife, Pam, who's also a barbecue judge, we were judging an event maybe somewhere like Clover, South Carolina. We were judging an event, and she elbowed me and she said, this one has an off something about it. She said, I can't describe it, but it smells like a wet Labrador retriever after it's been in the... But anyway, here's the end of the story. After the judging was over, it did not score well. All the other judges, they knew something was a little bit off with it, but not quite. Searching around, we discovered what cook team that was. And I kind of probed around a little bit. They had a brand new cooker, and it had just been spray painted at an auto body shop. And that paint was off-gassing. And that paint was giving an off flavor into that meat. There it was. I mean, but like you say, to bring your point to light, cook teams need to have a well-dialed in experience. The cooker needs to be established. The cooker needs to be seasoned. They need to know the temperature ranges, how the wind overnight is going to affect it, the cooling temperatures. They've got to know how to adjust it, because you want your temperature to be real constant, like 225 to 250 degrees, right in that range, to slowly break that collagen down in that pork so it just melts apart.
Yeah. It's tricky.
It's tricky.
It takes a lot of learning.
It's tricky. It's tricky. But I would like to suggest it would be a good comparison for somebody to try commercial barbecue. We can say any of the places. We could say Elliott's or Slabs. We can say Cane's. We can say Woodstone. We can say Schuler's. We can say a lot of them. You'll have your favorites. But I would like to suggest that somebody try competition barbecue so they can see and make their own decision. Yeah. What's good?
I'm hoping that we can make it out there. And so, again, that's Friday and Saturday. That's the 11th and the 12th. And the time?
The time is on Friday night. Remember, it's like chicken wings or things like this. Savory, you'll get some of the best desserts you've ever put in your mouth, banana pudding and cheesecakes and all this stuff. That's 5 to 7 on Friday. And then on Saturday is when the barbecue's available. That there won't be anything but barbecue available. So come hungry, and that's between 11 and 2.
11 and 2.
11 and 2.
Out at the fairgrounds.
At the fairgrounds. Then the awards for the cook teams are presented at 2 o'clock. They'll host all the cook teams up to to the front of the stage, and then they'll announce it, and they'll give prizes and the hardware and the trophies and the cash, all this. And the public is certainly encouraged to watch and see if they can pick out the barbecue that will end up winning. That's a challenge for the public.
I was about to say that.
Yeah.
So you could actually go try them and then test your own evaluation skills and see if what you selected how it ranks.
That's exactly what I would suggest people try to do.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. Hopefully we can, like I said, we've got a new addition, so everything's kind of touch and go at the moment, but hopefully we could make it out there. I know the boys would enjoy that too.
For sure. Well, most people are one-trick ponies, and they'll stay in that rut. Once they get in the rut, they'll stay there. They go to the same place, they eat the same thing, they order the same thing. I like to see adventure palates. Right. I like to see people trying new things. And like I said, when I was in the service, when I was in Spain, I couldn't read the menu. I could pick up, the seafood, or I knew the names of things. I'd just point to something and order it. Now that's adventure, because you don't know, I might be eating rabbit.
Yeah.
That's okay. I'd eat it. I'd enjoy it.
I'm pretty much like that. I had we went on a cruise in like 2008, and I ordered I actually did order oysters. It was oysters that's what we asked the server to bring us, was oysters. We did order correctly, because they'll show you the menu ahead of time on the TV in your room. You can kind of figure out what you're going to do at dinner that night. And they bring us this plate with like 6 of these big items on there. And they didn't look like oysters to me, but I thought maybe these are some kind of oyster from around the world that I'm not familiar with. I'm not a big oysters fan anyway, so I was being adventurous. We eat the whole plate, and it was good. It was not bad. I was like, oh, it's not bad at all. So the waiter comes back and is like, give us some more of those oysters. We'd actually like to get another plate if we could, another round of those. It was an appetizer. He's like, oysters? He said, he didn't have oysters. So what do we have? He said, that was the escargot. I thought that's what you ordered. And it's funny because earlier that evening, we looked at it, so we're definitely not getting that. Well, we did get that, and it wasn't bad. But the mental thing, never mind, we're good. We'll pass. So there's a good chance I'll never eat it again. But I did have the escargot, and I can say I've done that. It was an accident, and it wasn't that bad. So I'm adventurous. I'm maybe not that adventurous, but
sure. Yeah.
So anyways, that wasn't a bad experience overall. With that said, I know that you've got some various materials you were telling me about, and I told you just kind of save it and let's discuss it while we've got the cameras rolling and we're recording. So what'd you bring? What do you got?
For the adventurous folks that want to produce their own barbecue at home, like we were discussing, it's got to be done well. It's got to be done with some thought and consideration. You've got to have at least a Weber kettle grill. You've got to have a little knowledge going into it. But there is a wide latitude of what you can do and enjoy what your barbecue ends up producing. There's a guy in Hemingway, South Carolina. What's that, 45 miles from us? Rodney Scott, who's fairly well known in the area. Mm-hmm. He's one of the original pit masters from the area. I knew his mom and dad when they were alive and would go over there and poked around their pits with them. And Rodney was just a younger fellow, just kind of learning the ropes. But Rodney has become one of the leading pit masters of all. Mm-hmm. I remember going over and picking up a pan of barbecue. And Mrs. Scott, her name's Ella, Mrs. Scott would give me a couple of quart containers of their vinegar pepper sauce. That vinegar pepper sauce had lemons floating in it. So it gave it that brightness. It gave it that acidity. The lemon rind sort of rendered into the hot sauce, and the oils from that lemon just permeated in there. And I never really thought much about it, Sammy, until recently. I was making some barbecue sauce, and I ordered a book from a gentleman from South Carolina. He's from the Somerville, North Charleston area. His name is Jim Roller, and he's an English professor and a journalism major. And Jim put together a book on South Carolina barbecue called Going Whole Hog. It is a fantastic book. If I had one book in my arsenal to recommend to somebody, it's this book. It has Rodney Scott's recipe for vinegar pepper with the lemon and tells you how to prepare the lemon, how to get those oils out of those lemon peels so it doesn't overpower it and make it bitter. Jim Roller went to restaurants like in Bessinger's and Sheely's and Heights all through the state and got recipes, got their top secret recipes some way or another. He got a recipe from the people that owned the Rogers Barbecue, the Rogers original owners, got a recipe from them for some things. It is absolutely fantastic book. I'm not selling books. I'm not in the book selling business, but I would like to show if any of your readers want the best book of all. This is a book called Going Whole Hog. This is by James Roller. This is on Amazon, available on Amazon. Fantastic book for those that are interested in barbecue, interested in finding restaurants to try, or those that have. This is full of recipes to do your own. It's got mustard-based recipes, vinegar, pepper. It's got hash. Now, we hadn't talked about hash yet, but hash is a big deal in South Carolina.
It is.
A big deal, and I'll touch base with you on the hash before we close. This would be my number one book, available on Amazon, Going Whole Hog by James Roller. Another really, really, really good book is, as we mentioned, available on Amazon. This is Rodney Scott's Secret to Great Barbecue. This is Rodney Scott. Another really, really fine book from rags to riches, basically. And I have been on the same pit that Rodney was as a younger fella, him out there sweating and saying, oh, man, now he's made it.
Yeah.
He's made it. This is a fantastic book. He's a legend. And he was in Florence last week.
He was.
You probably met him last week.
No, I didn't. With the baby and all the stuff. I didn't.
Okay. But this is a fantastic book. And here's a book that's, we hadn't talked about ribs either, but hash and ribs go along with barbecue typically. This is another one called Meathead. This is a guy that's sort of a guru. He looks at things on a scientific approach, how hot the temperature should be, when the collagen breaks down to make the meat more tender, how you create a smoke ring on your barbecue. You ever notice that little pinkish ring? Yep. What is called a Maillard reaction with the caramelization of the crust. This is a great book too. These three books, if you don't have anything else to do, you want relating to barbecue, no other books, I would suggest these three.
Okay.
James Roller, Going Whole Hog being the first one I would pick.
I'll put Amazon links to all three of those down in the description of this episode. And also, just to circle back, talking about resources down in the description or the show notes, is there a website also for the competition that's coming up? Is there some kind of resource that I can put down there where people can look into it?
People that are interested in becoming judges can also look at the South Carolina Barbecue Association's website. Okay. They can join to become a judge. You have to go through classes, of course. You go through judging classes. Or also on that same website, you can see when the events are going to happen.
I'll link that down in the show notes also. So I'll put the link to all three of these books through Amazon, and also I'll link that website down in the show notes.
Great. I would like to mention a couple of the sides that typically are found with barbecue, and that is in the PD region, we are very well known for liver hash. Now, some people are sort of find liver off-putting and understood. Some people that are born and raised on it will have nothing else. So it's a product of your environment. Schuler's Barbecue over in Latta probably has the best liver hash that I've had. I'll ride over, of course, from my house, it's not that far. I'll ride over and pick up a couple of quarts of liver hash, and then when I do my Boston butts on my Weber Smoky Mountain, I'll pull out the liver hash and do that, and I like collard greens and liver hash on rice and barbecue.
That's good eating.
Yeah, that's good eating.
I'll tell you, the thing that's funny about that is even for me as a kid growing up, you're a kid, you're like, I'm not eating liver, but I would always eat the hash because I wasn't told, as maybe some children were, but I wasn't told liver hash is just hash. Yeah. And so you get barbecue and hash over rice and maybe red gravy, whatever. But I would eat it, and I still eat it. And as I've gotten older, I'm more, I can approach liver a little bit differently now. I'm more open to it than I might have been then. But even then, I would eat it. But if you tried to give me a plate of sauteed liver or even fried liver, I probably wouldn't even touch it. But I would eat the hash not knowing what it was. Some stuff's just in your head. It's just, you don't know what you don't know.
I understand. And hash is sort of like our sauces, Sam, in the fact that you find vinegar, pepper, and mustard base and light tomato. Hash is the same way. If you're in this PD zone, if you're all the way down in through the low country, what you're going to find is that the hash typically is going to be a liver, some component of liver. And that was by the old farmers, that they used all parts of the hog. They didn't waste anything. Now, when you get into the Midlands, when you get to Bessinger's and when you get over to Sheely's and Heights, their hash typically doesn't have a lot of liver influence in it. They're doing pork parts, and it has a tomato base. It's more of a red type of a hash, even as close as Sumter is to us, more of a red base. So then that's a whole nother style. You get into the upstate, and then you're making hash out of beef and onions. It's almost like a Brunswick stew without the corn and lima beans and stuff in it. So it's, once again, very regional. What you were raised on is what you think is the right thing to have.
Interesting.
And that's so the other thing that I think is sort of goes hand in hand with barbecue or pulled pork barbecue, so to say, would be ribs.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something different. I'll tell you that in a minute.
Certainly. Well, I had ribs yesterday. I had pulled pork and I had ribs yesterday. Ribs are very tricky. Have you ever heard the term, Sam, fall off the bone?
Yeah, you sure did have ribs yesterday, because whenever I come to your table, all you had was a bone. There wasn't any meat left on it.
Looked like a beaver on a log. But ribs have a bad rap by the term, these ribs were fall off the bone tender.
Yeah.
How far from untrue that should be. If you served a rib in a barbecue competition and it just fell off the bone, you're out. You're done. A rib, properly done, should have a bite through. You should leave a teeth mark impression, and that should pull cleanly off the bone. You shouldn't have to gnaw it off the bone. The meat shouldn't stick to the bone, but you should have bite marks impression, and it should pull off just perfectly off the bone. Kind of hard to get to that point. Got to know what you're doing. Yeah. Had one of those yesterday.
Nice. Well, I could tell you enjoyed them. They looked enjoyable.
Did you see all the sauce around my mouth?
Yeah. Yeah, I was in and out, but I definitely picked up on that. I thought that you were going to say, because we were talking about sides, but ribs definitely, pulled pork, ribs go hand in hand. I actually just had this conversation last night for Easter coming up. My mom, we're going to go out to her house this year, and she's asked me if I would be willing to smoke something. I've got a Masterbuilt Gravity series that I smoke on, which I really enjoyed that.
Absolutely.
And going to try to do a couple racks of ribs. So they might not be up to my future brother-in-law's competition level, but hopefully we'll do pretty well and try to nail that if we can, because I know that there's that fine median where you're not gnawing off the bone, but also, there's a little bit of bite to them. But I thought you were going to say fatback. Because you don't waste anything on the pig. And I grew up just an inside joke and inside running theme in my life. But the people that know me, I go out to my mom's, we go to grandma's on Sunday after church, take the kids out there, and you better get to the fatback before I get to it because and everybody can't eat it. The fatback, some people's teeth they can't. But God bless me with good strong teeth, and I will eat the fatback, and I'll eat all of it if it's around me. So like we go to Rogers, for example, and I'll stop at the fatback station and just pile that up on the plate.
I can
collards, fatback, rice and hash, and the barbecue, and I'm good to go.
That's it. That's it. That's the big four.
Yeah,
absolutely. One major difference of barbecue that we can find commercially is the difference between whole hog, where they're cooking the entire hog on the pit, versus what is very much more trendy, which are easier to handle, which is just the shoulders of butts.
Yeah,
just the butts. And there's a big difference in the meat. Whole hog barbecue along that loin is white meat. The shoulders and the hams have dark and white meat, just like a chicken. So when you have a whole hog and it's done properly and shredded and pulled properly, you'll see some white strands in there, some darker strands. With a butt, which is so much easier and more convenient to do, nobody much can, on a home level, can do a whole hog, or
right.
usually the whole hog is a treat. And I suggest people search out restaurants that do whole hog. I know that Whole Hog, for example, is done, Brown's Barbecue in Kingstree. Country Cousins Barbecue used to be in Scranton. They moved over to Atlanta. They have a whole hog wood-fired pit in their restaurant in Atlanta, Country Cousins. So search out those whole hog restaurants, and you'll have a real treat there. You'll see the difference.
We used to. I have a buddy. He doesn't do it anymore. He had a bunch of children now. He's got a mess of children, as they say himself. But we used to, right around New Year's Eve, maybe a little bit prior, usually just after though. And a lot of people do this tradition locally, to my knowledge at least. Or even when I was a kid, my grandfather, we'd do the pig picking, and that was a little bit different. I had a buddy, and we would lay the pit out, get the fire going over here, shovel the coals in. Because a lot of people don't know, but this is a whole pit. So it's like cinder blocks and mesh wire of some sort that he had laid down. And we would go pick up the hog from IGA or wherever it may be out there in Timmonsville at the time and lay it out. And it's an all-night event. I was never a big all-nighter at any point in my life. I don't need to sleep all day, but at night I like to sleep. So I usually wouldn't stay all night. I'd stay till about midnight, go home, go to sleep, and then come back because the hog be ready usually somewhere around lunchtime. And so, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's different, and it is a treat. So like I said, that would be a once-a-year event, and it's the amount of work, it's the expense, the cost, but it's also the final product that you get. That's the payoff. I want to ask you one more thing, too, that we didn't talk about, and I'm glad that I remembered. Talking about barbecue sauces, but I want to talk about it because I want to ask how much you see this or what. Is anything that when I say it, what comes to mind for you? What is Alabama white sauce?
Mayonnaise-based sauce that's a little bit savory. They've added a few things. It's really more mayonnaise than anything else. A little bit of lemon juice to pick it up, some flavorings, and used typically on chicken wings.
Right.
Yeah.
So I went, and that's actually what I got yesterday when I went. Like I said, it was a chicken sandwich, but the Alabama white sauce on the fried chicken sandwich, super good.
It's good.
It is.
Yeah. But once again, you're open to different things. That's the key to it.
Yeah.
Open to different things. You heard a child saying, "Ooh, I don't like this." Well, have you ever tried it? No. Okay.
Right. That is the dilemma.
Yes, it is.
You got to open your mind. You got to get it out of your head. But I think because I think I probably was like that to an extent. I wasn't really a picky eater, but you're used to what you're used to. So it's not really about being picky all the time. It's just kind of like, I'm accustomed to this. And like I just mentioned earlier in this episode, I said that I prefer vinegar-based by a long shot. That's true. And then mustard-based is a distant second. That's also true. But I'm open to all of it, though. So that's why I'm looking forward to if we can get out there next weekend and trying some different things from the upstate or the western part of the state. That I would be excited about that. So with that said, that also is a good segue to what I'd like to, as we start to kind of land this. I want to ask you about this. When you look at the current landscape of barbecue in the PD, particularly Florence, the city of Florence, where do you see us right now? What are some things that you see that you're excited about? And we've talked a little bit about Elliott's and some of it, but just to unpack it a little bit more, what are your thoughts about our local barbecue scene?
Well, I tell you that we have a large variety of great places to eat within striking distance. And what I mean by striking distance is you and your family can ride over for dinner and get back without having to get a hotel room in another state somewhere. And I don't want to specifically name restaurants, not my purpose, but right here in Florence, right in the PD, we have really, really good barbecue. Some of the best side dishes you find at a barbecue buffet is fried chicken. For some reason, they make some off-the-chain fried chicken at barbecue restaurants. I don't know what it is about it. You go to Cane's, you go to Schuler's, you go to some of these barbecue buffets, Woodstone, you go to some of them, and the chicken is absolutely fantastic. Now, I'm not trying to get somebody to go to eat the chicken, but I always want to make sure I get a piece of fried chicken at the buffet.
Absolutely. And I'm 100% biased, but I view South Carolina as the heart of the South. I think that's just the way that it is. The good, the bad, and the ugly, historically, South Carolina is the heart of the South, and even the history of barbecue that you alluded to earlier. And you know that you're in the South whenever fried chicken is a side item.
Yes.
Because you called it a side item, and that's hilarious, I think.
But it's a side
true.
item. I mean,
That's what happens. I mean, if we go to, I mentioned Rogers, Woodstone, any of the buffet joints, you're always going to grab a piece of chickens, but it is basically a side item.
Yeah.
At that time.
It's right by the rutabagas and the lima beans.
Right, but I don't know if it's like that anywhere else in the country. Maybe it is, but I doubt it.
It's not the featured attraction.
I'm definitely very excited about, like I said, the entire food scene in Florence and where things are going, and things that have happened over the last 5 to 10 years, and then recently, and the projections going forward. And some people get turned off. Like they'll say this happens, and obviously in the Florence Foodies Facebook group, you see some of this, and this kind of conversation goes on where it's like we've got all of these chicken places, Mexican restaurants, and barbecue places. And I understand that, but I think there's still value in, as long as we're bringing in, then that means there's a market. And so you got to view that as a good thing. And I think there's enough room, especially with the growth of the area, that people can have their favorite places. There's nothing wrong with you. That's going to happen. You don't have to make apologies for that. Like I have my favorite places, you do as well. That's okay. But as long as there's something for everybody, that's a positive thing. And so barbecue, everybody's got their different nuance. I mean, I've had Rodney's barbecue. So if you have Rodney's as opposed to Elliott's, and then you were to go over to a place like Woodstone, there's this variation in what you're going to get. And the beauty of it is, especially if you have an open mind, especially if you just enjoy food, if you're like me, I like all three of those places I just mentioned. Like I can have value and desire for all three of those on any different given day. And so it's the same thing with this competition. I mean, if I've got 20 different 2-ounce cups of barbecue, then my goal would be to try all of them. And I could very well like all 20 of them. That's very possible.
Yeah, and that's exposure. That's keeping your mind open and your palate open for things. And
so I would say the more the merrier, and what we have going on is something to be excited about. With that said, we're going to move over and do a segment that we call the Florence Foodies' favorite Florence food item, sponsored by Drayton Realty Group. So the question is, Morrey, what is your favorite Florence food item anywhere in Florence County, but from a restaurant? What would you say? And you're at liberty to name more than one if you would like.
Well, I was going to ask you if I can name two.
Absolutely.
Of course, with Elliot Moss on the scene at Seminar Brewing, it would be hard for me to discuss my love of barbecue and not pick barbecue as one of my favorite foods. So certainly I'm going to say that. His pulled pork is fantastic. The ribs are fantastic. So let's consider that co-sharing spot number 2. Now, this one's probably going to surprise you. Of course, I love good sandwiches. I could go to Jersey Mike's and eat a couple of number 13s, a week or that kind of thing. I absolutely loved, and this is after I spent a month in Southeast Asia and was in Vietnam, in Saigon, and Nha Trang, and was eating pho for noodle soup for breakfast and for whatever. Shogun in Florence has absolutely, I would put that up with any restaurant I had overseas in Vietnam. And I would strongly, my wife and I said, oh yeah, this is it. This is good. So I'm going to co-share the barbecue, and I'm going to co-share that beef noodle soup, pho soup that's available at Shogun.
It's a great answer. And I saw whenever you posted that in the Facebook group, and there's been a lot of conversation about Shogun. So it started, one person mentioned something about them reopening, rebranding. I don't know the whole story behind it. And I mean, it's been one after another, and your post was one of them that I saw. I have not been over there yet. I've got to get over there, though. It's on my short list. So I'm chipping away at it. Great answer. Great answer.
My wife asks me on a regular basis, we're both retired, and she'll say, have you seen have you seen anything from Florence Foodies or from Sam Fryer mentioning any new restaurants we need? I said, well, he mentioned a smash burger he really likes somewhere. What we do is we use your group and we use your podcast to direct our next eating adventure, and we're sort of following the lead. We feel like your efforts to make Florence the food scene have paid huge dividends for the community. We're following you. If you suggest something, we went to eat a large Mexican sandwich with all kind of crazy stuff on it over on Irby Street. I said, Pam, I can't eat all this stuff.
Cubano.
Yeah. We follow you closely in regard to what our next food strategy is going to be, where we're going to go next, or what. So you're providing a tremendous service to the Florence area, to the PD area, and we're following your lead.
I appreciate it, and that goes back to what I said when we opened up the episode. Is I've felt that from the beginning with you and a few other people, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that and how encouraging it is, because that's really at the heartbeat of what I would like to see happen. This is not an income stream for me and my household. This is something that an opportunity has opened up, and we've been able to kind of evolve and expand on it, and would like to continue to do that. But it really is a passion, and that's what we would like to see. And so I'll go, because of my own open-mindedness and adventurous side of wanting to go out and try things, I realized that I mentioned it earlier off camera. We go out of state, we travel, we'll go eat all these places. It's like, I'm not doing this at home. And we just started doing that, a few years back, 4, 5, 6, whatever it's been now. And finding all these great items, meeting all these great people. So like the folks at Pedrita's, I talk about Pedrita's all the time. That's where the sandwich
That's
was
where
at.
I had the...
And it's what you would call a hole-in-the-wall type place. It's just a place that not a lot of people know about, but they're doing excellent Mexican food over there and unique items like the sandwich.
Yeah.
So a sandwich like that, with the hot dogs on it and the avocado and everything, the chorizo, the steak, you can get a sandwich like that in other places in the country, but I don't know of another place that specific sandwich is actually at. And so just exposing that, and then to hear that you've gone and tried it and other people came back and said, man, that thing is crazy, but it's
huge.
Awesome. And that is so exciting for us, and so it's a win-win for everybody. I want to see those guys do great. There's restaurant owners all over the county that they're doing a great job and they're working really hard, and we want to see them succeed and do well. And so I just really appreciate it, and it's really exciting. That's really the heartbeat of what we're doing, and the group taking its own life. It's not just myself, you, and I could name a list of people that are in that Facebook group that are doing the same thing in their own way. Even if it's just you go out to eat and take a picture and post it and say, we're at Shogun, or we're at, this place or that place, and sharing an item. And then other people say, man, I want to go try that. It's a grassroots coalition of food.
And Florence is very quickly, believe it or not, as you and I discussed, becoming a food destination. It's a foodie hotspot.
They had the Post and Courier article that you mentioned the other day.
Yeah. Yeah, people are coming to Florence to eat. That's who'd have thunk it,
Exactly. And that it's amazing. It really is. I can't help but smile, because I've mentioned it multiple times on this platform, on videos, and even on the podcast, but I just remember it's just stuck in my mind, that comment years ago, having a conversation similar to this, but projecting an idea, a vision, and the comment being made, Florence can't have a food scene equivalent to something like you see in Asheville. And
or Charleston.
Yeah. And I'm sitting there like, pound for pound, maybe not because of demographics, because of population, but just, maybe even on a smaller scale, but why not? Who says who? Who said that? And all you need is people that love food and that want to cook and serve it. And then we just need the people in the community to respond, to be open-minded, be adventurous, and want to go eat. And I think that's doable. I think we're finding that it is. So it's a very exciting time.
Very exciting.
So I appreciate it. And all the knowledge. I had no idea until I put that open call out for guests. If anybody wanted to come be a guest, part of the community, and you responded to it. Up until that point, in preparation for the show, I had no idea about your background and relationship to barbecue. I find this stuff fascinating. So there's so much education and history and science and chemistry to food that people don't think about. And if you get into it, then it is exciting. And the thing I'll close with and saying is there's a popular meme that's been going around at least for about a year since I first saw it. And it says that when men hit their late 30s, they either become obsessed with World War II history or smoking meats. And for me, it's been smoking meats. So World War history, World War II, Vietnam, all that stuff's cool. I find it interesting. But for me, smoking meats has been the real fascination. And so I find all of that stuff fascinating.
The only other thing, when you talk about smoking meats, is that was certainly, I think you and I are in the same vein of smoking meats. As a master judge, one of the requirements to become a master judge was to cook with several cook teams. I think it was 3 or 4 different events. I had to cook with a cook team and spend the night with them, prep with them, and learn from them to see what a cook team went through to make the competition barbecue happen. They taught me how to cook competition professional barbecue. So I can take those skills, bring them home with me, and I can emulate or replicate competition barbecue right there at my house. And that's what I'm doing. I still love to go out because it's easy. Let somebody else do the heavy lifting. Let somebody else spend the night with the barbecue. But being a judge with the Barbecue Association taught me how to smoke my own meat.
Yeah, there's just so much to it with food, and it's an appreciation. You can really graduate to another level as a diner, as an eater. And it actually enhances your own experience with food. I think it's not just barbecue. It was really Mark Wien's YouTube channel. That was how I met Elliot, actually. Or not met him, but that was how I got exposed to who Elliot Moss was through Mark Wien's channel. He went up to Buxton Hall there in Asheville. And watching Mark travel the world and eat all this different cuisine, and one that sticks out in my mind was the Dorawat in Ethiopia with the Burberry chicken stew. But watching the preparation, because he'll just go into people's houses. He'll go to restaurants, like he went to Buxton Hall, like I mentioned, but he'll just go to people's houses also. The video that he did when he was in Jerusalem was awesome. Family just brought him in and made a traditional, I think it was like a roasted chicken or something they did. But either way, the stew particularly, I think about all of the preparation that goes into making that Dorawat in Ethiopia. And it's a lot of it's a whole day's job because they're preparing the chicken. Everything's done there literally from scratch. So the preparation of the chicken down to there's a massive amount of onions that goes in that recipe, and cooking them all the way down. It's a slow cooking process. You literally render them down to almost nothing. So there's nothing left but pure rendered flavor. And it's a very intensive dish. And just watching all of that. But the same thing with the barbecue. When you learn all of the preparation, it really starts to separate the degrees of food. And so you can go to a fast food restaurant and get things you like. You mentioned Jersey Mike's. If you've watched my content, I've mentioned a lot of times, I love Jersey Mike's. Huge Jersey Mike's fan. But there's just different levels to food. And so when you can, like this competition is coming up and you can go and you can actually understand the backstory of how this product gets there, it actually enhances your own experience, because you get to a place where you can actually pick up on all of the notes. So you can actually start to pick up on the time, the smoke absorption, that kind of thing. And you can actually kind of start to detect to a degree, like the amount of preparation. Now, really good cooks they're so good, they could throw something together in an hour that seems like it was cooked over an 8-hour period, but you really can. So it's just like I say, cooking's an art form. And the presentation of cooking is also an art form, and so we enjoy doing it.
Yeah, before Pam and I went to Southeast Asia, we went in February and spent the whole month there. Before we went, I looked at every YouTube video that Mark Wiens produced about Southeast Asia.
I do the same thing.
I watched everyone. I took notes, mental notes, and when we would go somewhere like in Singapore, I'd say, "Oh, that's the hawker center that Mark was talking about." YouTube can be a very valuable resource to us. It has it. If you need to change the oil in your lawnmower, it'll tell you how to do it. You can find it. But Mark is a great. He's got a lot of energy, a lot of personality, and I watch all of his videos. And when we're going to go to Rome, and we're going to go to Paris, and we're going to go to London next year, and I'll be looking at his videos about some of the secret places to go and what to find culinary. We go on culinary adventures. We do cooking classes in chefs' homes, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we do too. And so look, one more little nugget for you. I'll drop another little jewel on you for those that didn't know what Morrey and I are talking about right now. Another video that we watched, so we'd go up to the Sight and Sound Theater frequently up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. We make a trip up. I grew up a big Eagles fan, so we go up to the Philadelphia area and that kind of thing. It was an annual trip, and then it just became a little too burdensome. Maybe we'll make it again in the near future. But again, Mark Wiens, I got introduced to the Shady Maple Smorgasbord, which is this gigantic buffet. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
Huge buffet. And they've got two actual buffet aisles, same items on both sides. But I mean, I don't know what the occupancy even is, but it's a lot of people, huge place. And they bring buses of people into this place. And so he went on about it, made it look so great. So we went to check it out. And it really was, to date, the best buffet I've been to. This Dutch country up there. They cook everything with a lot of fats. It's just very intentional cooking again. Very, very lengthy process. A lot of attention to detail in that style of cooking. Fantastic. I mean, the fried chicken... you wouldn't know, Pennsylvania, you would think, well, South Carolina boy raving about fried chicken in Pennsylvania. I'm telling you, absolutely fire. And I had roast beef. It's all kind of stuff. The mashed potatoes. I mean, I could go on with everything. And we had to make 2 trips. We had to do the breakfast also, but I saw that on Mark. So we do the same thing. So it's like, okay, well, we're going to a location. Where did Mark go? And that might not be the only thing we eat, but that's at least a starting point. And I do that, man. I mean, I've gotten to where over the last a couple of months in particular, I watch all of Dave Portnoy's pizza reviews. So I know if I'm somewhere, up north, particularly where he's usually at, then maybe we can go check out one of these pizza spots that he gave a high rating to. So anyways, I could go on about this stuff for a long time, but I won't. For the sake of length, we could always do this again. Definitely love to have you come back and join us, but I really appreciate everything, like I said, and your contribution to everything in the Florence food scene, and then the information you've brought today. And you want to plug anything before we close it up?
Well, I just appreciate the invitation to share the experience with you. I hope that people will be adventurous and try some different, not only barbecue, but other culinary adventures. The food trucks over at Eats by the Creek. I mean, look at what that's bringing to the scene. Look at if you want Thai food, if you want various other types of cuisine, we can find. When I grew up, you couldn't find anything like that in Florence or Darlington. Yeah. Now it's available to us. Just try it. Just get out and try it.
Absolutely. And we preach that message all the time. And so I definitely appreciate your contributions and Pam's as well, just in general to everything in relation to what we've talked about today. And if you'd like to connect with Morrey, he's a very active member in the Facebook group. So if you're not part of most of you are, but if you're not part of the Florence Foodies Facebook group and you're local, you definitely want to be in that group. And Morrey's certainly an active participant in that group. And with that said, I appreciate you stopping by and sitting down with us. And as always, I appreciate y'all's viewership and listenership. Y'all take care, and God willing, we'll see you on the next one.